So I've come on a few minutes early. I hope you can actually see me and hear me if you arrived early as well. I'll wait until it's actually 4 o'clock before I start, you know, doing the proper welcome, etc., etc. So hopefully this is going to work. New event. Oh, good. It says here that it is watchable. Brilliant. So now I'm just going to check that I can actually see the comments. Yes, it looks like I can. And I'm just going to put a comment in to just make sure that I can actually see the comments. Excellent. Great. So we seem to be all set. So if you are here with me right now, watching, I know it is right now and it is here wherever you are, whatever time it is. But if you are here now at 3 minutes to 4 on Wednesday afternoon, watching and listening, if you just say hello in the comments, that would be really nice. And just let me know that you're there. There we go. Oh, it's put my comment up twice. Excellent. So if you're just arriving, welcome. Maybe say hello in the comments and let me know you're here. Of course, if you are watching this next week or some other time and you put something in the comments, I won't see it immediately, but I will see it in due course. Great. So I'll make it 4 o'clock. So welcome. I'm Catherine Llewellyn. Welcome to my second LinkedIn Live. And if you're thinking about doing LinkedIn Lives, good luck, because the tech is definitely an adventure. But I'm here, and the bit that's always beautiful and lovely is when I'm here with you, with people. And of course, that's why I do the work I do. And that's why a lot of us do the work we do, because actually being with people present, communicating, sharing, hopefully contributing, asking questions, discussing and exploring together is what life's all about. It's one of the most wonderful things. I have a podcast, and at the end of the podcast, I ask people what they most enjoyed in the conversation. And a lot of people say, actually, I just really enjoy being able to be with somebody where we're both paying attention and we're both following our own strands of where the energy is taking us and what has meaning for us, and listening and communing. And the fact we can do it with somebody we've never met before, we have met, but we don't know each other terribly well, we're on a different continent possibly, is just a wonderful thing. So in our high technology lives, I think that's what we actually are interested in. We're not really interested in all the tech and the admin and all of the backing and forthing. We're interested in real life. That's what we're interested in. And that connects to what I'm here to talk about today, which is about those moments in our lives when we've traveled a long way. We've probably gone past the time when a century or so ago we actually would have been dead, or just in a pair of slippers in front of the fire. But now everything's different. Now, someone said to me the other day, 45 is the new 18, 70 is the new 45. We're in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We're still full of life. We still have something calling us on to engage with meaning, to contribute, to participate, to have every moment be fresh and new, whilst also valuing the amazing wisdom and experience and learning and the tempering in the fires of life that we've all experienced along the way. So I spend a lot of time talking to people in those particular moments in their lives, and how people experience that really varies from person to person. So part of my purpose in doing these lives is for me just to talk live, which for me is a really beneficial experience because it forces me to get in touch with what actually has meaning for me and just put it out there, knowing anyone anywhere can watch this. I don't get to watch it and edit it before you do that. This is just me. That's very good for my spirit to do that. It's a bit nerve-wracking, but it's a really healthy thing for me to do. It also fits in with the fact that I want to raise my visibility and let people know I'm here and that I'm available to help certain kinds of people with certain kinds of things. So that's my agenda. That's what I get out of it. But what I hope for you to get out of this is that you can actually give me your questions, your comments, your sharings, your observations about where you are in that whole cycle in relationship to your calling, your mission, your ethos, your vocation, whatever that might be, however you might call that, spiritual path, some people call it. And I'll, in real time, respond to that as best I can. So while I'm waiting to see if anyone wants to put up any comments or questions, I've got a few that I brought with me from conversations I've had in the last few weeks with people in this regard. So one thing that comes up a lot is the very senior guy who's been working in a corporate environment, maybe often a large corporate environment, where they've been carrying heavy responsibility. It's been really satisfying for them. They maybe made a lot of money, they've learned a lot, they've grown, they've evolved, and they reach a point where it's time for them to move on. They've had enough, basically, of that particular vehicle for their contribution. They have, in quotes, retired. And I was talking to somebody the other day who was saying, I'm just having fun in the garden, playing with the grandchildren, walking the dogs. That's what I'm interested in now at the moment. And I think that's me done. And we talked a little bit more, and it turned out he was actually exhausted, absolutely exhausted, from several decades of the life he'd been living. And he'd been wearing himself out on levels he didn't even know existed. And he didn't know this until he retired. And he was kind of assuming that this exhaustion meant that he was done, that he didn't have any more creativity left in him. He didn't have any more new ideas, new missions, new phases of his path and his calling in him. As we talked about it, he realized that may not actually be true, but that it was not possible for him to know whether or not that's true until he has recovered and rested. And that's what he needs to do now. That's his next step on his path, is to rest. He doesn't know what's on the other side of that. He doesn't know whether that is for the rest of his life, or whether that's just for the next few months, or whether it's just for the next 6 months, or whether it's 3 months resting and then 3 months doing something interesting, or whether it's doing something interesting for a couple of days a week and then resting and then playing once he gets his energy back. So he then looks around, as we all do, at what is everybody else doing. And the models of what everyone else is doing at these times are incomplete, because we're still very early on in the generations of what people call the third age, where we've got a lot more in us available. And yet we've left the full-time job a couple of years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And there are no really exciting and inspiring models out there to look at and to compare ourselves to. But actually, that's completely fine, because by the time we reach that point in our lives, we are very, very individual people. Some people say we're set in our ways. I'm not into that idea. I feel it's more about, we know who we are. We know what we're about. We know what matters to us. We know what we believe in. It doesn't mean we're not flexible. It probably means we can't be pushed around. It probably means no one's going to tell us how to live our lives and be welcomed. That we don't want that. That's not what we're looking for. It means that whatever our next phase is something only we can identify. And I've gone through moments like that many times across my life, because I've had a fairly unconventional life. So I've had that moment of, right, that's gone. Who am I now? Do I now switch off? Or do I want something else? Quite a few times, which is why I finally ended up noticing that's what I'm very good at helping other people with. So that's one conversation I had recently. I had another conversation recently with somebody who had, again, moved on from a corporate job, but he'd done it a little bit younger than this other guy, and he'd built a business and done very, very well with that business, sold it very well. He was really happy with the deal. He'd sold it. And then he thought, great, I'll retire now, buy another house somewhere on the continent. I'm talking about the European continent here, because I'm in the UK, and just settle down and enjoy life. And after a couple of years, he was absolutely bored, absolutely bored, Richard, and very lively still, healthy, youthful. And he thought, I want to do something else. So he tried a few things. But he tried those things without first catching up with who he is now. He's not the same person he was when he was in full-time employment, or even who he was when he created that business and sold it. He's someone else now. The essence of him is the same. The heart of him is the same. The spirit of him is the same. But in many ways, he's more evolved, and there are also all sorts of things that are no longer of interest to him, because he's had the learning in relation to those things. He doesn't need them now. They're not where he's going. So he tried a few things that were built on what he thought might work based on what he's done before, and they failed miserably. And he was really disappointed. And as a result of being really disappointed, he's now in a quandary. Does he look again at doing something else or not? And if he does look again at doing something else, how does he find the right thing that really fits for him now without trying to recreate the past? How does he do that? And he has this idea that maybe he could do with some help with it, possibly. But he's also got, like most of us here in the UK, really strong programming, which says, if someone else is helping you, particularly a bit later on in life, it means you're not really doing it yourself. It means they're doing it for you. And that's wrong. So actually, that is a myth. If someone helps you, me, anybody, they're not doing it for us. We're still doing it. They're just helping us. And again, unfortunately, here in the UK, most of us equate the idea of help with the idea that we've got something wrong with us or that we've failed. Now, if you look in the US, the culture there is very different. Over there, all the really successful people of any age, or a lot of them, have got several different people helping them. They've got coaches, facilitators, trainers, mentors, helpers. And this is not viewed, for a lot of the people I've talked to anyway, you can't sum up a culture of that many people, but for a lot of people, that's considered to be absolutely fine. It's an absolutely fine thing to do. But I've got this conditioning as well. Whenever I've hit one of these points in my life when it's time for me to look at what's next. Either I've let go of something and I'm looking for something new, or, and I'll talk about another example in a moment, or I'm in a different place where I want to keep doing what I'm doing, but something needs to change. Something is shifting, something's dropping away, something's not working anymore, something else seems to be working or calling on me unexpectedly. How do I respond to that? And there's a part of me that thinks, Catherine, at your age, you should be able to figure this out on your own. And honestly, who can possibly advise you or tell you what to do? Who can possibly give you any assistance, given the experience and the knowledge and the skills that you've got? Now, that is, I've discovered, for me, nonsense. Because in those times, when I actually look at, I could really do with some help and I reach out for it, I can always find somebody, and they might be half my age. They might be 20 years older than me. They might be the same age. They may be a man, a woman. It could be any nationality. They have to speak English because I'm not going to learn a new language at this point for that purpose. And it always makes such a difference. And the thing about it is it helps me experience myself in a brand new way. It doesn't help me become somebody else. So this is the third example I wanted to share, which is the example of somebody who has been following their mission. It's probably a business. It may be something quite alternative, or it may be something quite mainstream. They are independent in that regard. They are a founder, they're an entrepreneur, they're a leader. They may be a practitioner. They may be working in energy healing. They may be working in education. They may be working in film. They might be working in art. They might be working in IT, tech. It could be anything. But it's their thing. They're following it. Their reason for doing it is heart-led. It's spirit-led. It really matters to them. And something is shifting and changing. I talk to a lot of people who are in this place. And when they start to notice something and they get a feeling in the body, someone I was talking to the other day, the main feeling they had was a kind of scary confusion mixed with a sort of uncomfortable urgency. Scary confusion with uncomfortable urgency. Now, when I hear someone tell me that what that sounds like to me is that they are being called forward into a new expression of what they're doing. That's what that says to me. Because I'm outside of it, I can see it dispassionately. For that person who's inside that experience, and I can resonate because I've experienced this too, for that person inside that experience, that can feel like I'm failing, I have to stop. Or I'm too old for this, I have to stop. Or the market has shifted. What I'm offering is no longer wanted. I have to stop. All of these are the ego coming in, mixed up with some of that programming that we've all got, and interpreting that uncomfortable feeling as something that means pull back. Distrust yourself, doubt yourself. Stop trusting your true purpose. Stop trusting your calling. Step back, leave it. It's very, very difficult to navigate beyond that on our own. So this is why we need a friend, a partner, a support group, a peer group, a club, or a coach, or a mentor, or something. And in amongst all of those, whatever practices we have to keep us centered and grounded and fresh and rested, all of those things that we do become even more vital in that moment. Those are some of the examples of things that people have been sharing with me lately. So now I'm going to come on to some questions. So I've had lots of questions asked of me recently. I get questions all the time. And one of the questions I've received recently is one which is to do with what I call the second pillar of my work, which is activation. And these are questions around what is actually appropriate for me now in terms of changing, making a shift, some sort of epiphany, some sort of breakthrough, some sort of next level elevation of myself. What's appropriate for me now and what isn't? And how do I know that? For example, should I go and do ayahuasca? Should I go and do a warrior's retreat? Should I go and train as a hypnotherapist? Should I go and take up conscious dance? Should I go and train in cryptocurrency and everything that means? Should I go and train in AI? Should I go and live in a monastery for 3 months and say nothing, silent experience? Should I write a book, put myself into that experience? Should I become a coach? Should I stop being a coach? Should I start working with groups? Should I start working one-to-one with people? Should I start working with meditation? Should I start exploring quantum physics? Should I start getting into yoga? Should I drop some of the things I've been doing? Should I increase some of the things I've been doing? And people sit there going, what is the thing that will bring about the shift in me that is the next natural shift for me? And they look outside and they ask people like me, which one is the best fit for me? Which is a really interesting question. So what I tend to come back to them and say is, I think you're focusing on the how-to. You're focusing on, how do I make the shift? What's the method? What's the actions? What's the next steps to make the shift? And this is something in our culture that we've been programmed to do as well. We've been programmed to focus on action, work, tasks, work rate, productivity, all of those things. We've got a thing over here in the UK called the Protestant ethic, which is very much at the root of this for a lot of us over here. I don't know if that exists elsewhere in the world, but you've got your own version of it, wherever you are. So this idea that we've got to go, right, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I need to know how I'm going to do this so I can get on with it. And it needs to be the right way to do it so that I don't waste my time, my money, and my energy. And so I don't feel like a fool. And so I don't fail. And that can be a sticking point for many of us. How am I going to do it? So I remember going back to myself before I started my podcast. I had never done a podcast. Other people had suggested I do one. I suddenly decided I wanted to do one. And the first question I had was, how do I do it? And I started researching and looking around and, trying to find information. And then I came across this very, very successful podcaster. And he said his name was John Lee Dumas, or JLD. I don't know if he's still doing it or not, but he was very, very successful at the time. And he said, don't wait until you know how to do it. Start. Because if you wait until you know how to do it, you will never start. Don't wait until you know how to do it. Very interesting. So I thought, okay, I'll just start. And I'd figured out I needed a camera. Actually, I didn't have a camera at the time. I had a mic, but only because I'd been teaching 5 Rhythms dance. So I had a mic I'd used for that. So I had a mic that actually was much better for a public address system. It wasn't really suitable for podcasting. I had the camera on the computer and I knew how to use Zoom. I'd used Zoom. So I could, well, actually, no, I was just doing audio at the time. Yeah, I was too nervous to do Zoom. So I just did audio. I couldn't face interviewing people. So I would just sit there with my public address system microphone in front of my face and just talk and do solo episodes. And I was terrified. I had no idea if it was going to be any good or not, but I just started. And that put me in a place where I was engaging with the process. I actually was asking for advice and comments and other people listening to it, etc. But I started to discover what worked for me in the process. It forced me to connect with my own energy in relationship to it and to disconnect from any notion of doing it right, doing it the way other people do it or the way other people should do it. And because of that, I then developed my own style and, you know, the rest is history. And the show is now doing really very well indeed. But that was a situation where I jumped past that thing of how do I do it? So when it comes to this whole thing of being in a place which is a turning point or an up leveling or a stepping deeper into our calling situation. And by the way, I'm just going to refresh my page and see if I'm missing any comments or questions, because that would be rude. So when I've had that situation, and here we are, Michael, thank you very much. You're making some comments here. Awareness trumps all. Human disturbance stems from the unawareness of living in a system habitat versus how we function as a species of nature. Balances are creating art, healthy dialogue and adaptability. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Michael. Yes, I can see you. So I love, Michael, I always love it when you put these posts up because you're reminding us that we are living with systems and those systems affect our thinking. And we need to come back to our own nature, which is kind of what I was talking about. So I apologize for not seeing your comments for a few moments there. So, and you're saying how to and goal. So thing is, when people are asking how to, often they're asking how to when they haven't identified what they want. And also they haven't identified clearly where they are at the moment. So it's a bit like if you watch sprinters, before they start running, they get their feet really, really firmly planted on the earth. And some of them actually kick a little hole in the earth for bracing their foot before they start the run. So they get a very, very strong foundation on the earth before they start. And then when they start, they push from that foundation and they shoot forwards. That's something I've learned needs to be done when we're making a shift. We need that foundation. And what that foundation is total clarity about where we are now, who we are now, what's going on with us, how we feel about it, where we've reached in our evolving, and also what we've already contributed, because that gives us our foundation, which I also call integration, because we integrate it all together. And that's something we can push off of. If we don't have that, then we're searching in the dark when we're looking at how we're going to progress. So when people say to me, how do I, I say, start by getting really clear where you are now. When you've done that, don't try and do anything about it. Don't try and come up with how to, but get very, very clear about where you want to be. And anyone who's read the book, The Path of Least Resistance, it's a fantastic exposition of how to do this. And it sets up a dynamic whereby you then go into a state of inquiry, and then the next steps become apparent. They arise for us. So, Michael, I hope that gives you a bit of a response to your thing there. Give me another comment or a question, and maybe I'll see it and respond to it again. So this is something I've now understood when I'm doing lives. I need to keep refreshing the page so that I can see people's comments. Never in the now. Yes. Thank you, Michael. I think I need to take you on, Michael, as my secret prompt person. So when we're trying to go, how do we shift to where we want to be? We're not being in the now. We're trying to escape the now by coming up with a method to get to somewhere else that we probably haven't even defined. So that, by the way, that's another reason sometimes that people are very kind of wary of engaging with some sort of help with whatever their next shift is, because they know full well, and I'm working with a coach at the moment, and one thing that she does is she gets me into the moment with all my fears, my programming, my concerns, my confusion, my doubts, my overwhelm, all of those things. You know, part of her job and part of what she's doing is helping me face those in the moment rather than cleverly trick my own brain and pretend that's not going on. Which, by the way, all that goes on our entire lives, but not all the time. Thanks for that. So, yeah, so being in the now is absolutely the way through, and having some clarity about what our foundation is. So let me see if I got another thing that somebody has shared with me. No awareness of that we are all one. Yes. Now, that's a really interesting thing, again, because one of the things that happens, and I've noticed this, like years ago when I was a full-time executive coach, and that was all I was doing. No podcasting, no dance workshops, nothing else was going on. I would finish a program, and sometimes the program was 2 years long or 2.5 years long. Sometimes it was 3 months long, and often there were several programs running side by side in different organizations, but sometimes I would reach a point where they'd all stopped at the same time, and there was a period of time where there was no work going on. And sometimes there was another program booked due to start next month or in the next couple of months, and sometimes there wasn't. So in those moments, my partner at the time reflected that he noticed a really interesting dynamic that happened to me, which was that I would go into this weird tailspin of assuming that I had nothing to contribute and assuming that I was completely on my own, that no one was going to help me, the universe wasn't going to help me. All the clients I'd just finished working with, you know, they were friendly to me while we were working, but they didn't really care about me, etc. Madness, absolute madness. Now, I know that comes of old conditioning, etc., but it happens. So what Michael's just said about we are all one and having the awareness that we are all one is an absolutely vital antidote to that. And of course, this little interchange I'm having with Michael in this conversation now is a perfect example. We need to get into dialogue with other people. So what I've done, what I've had to do, I haven't done it all the time, but now I always do it right off the bat because I'm so conscious of when I haven't done it, how much time I've wasted. I get into dialogue with somebody about it. And it really is the way through because suddenly, like Michael said to me, awareness, we are one. I'd forgotten about that aspect of what I'm talking about here. But of course, he's absolutely right. The fact we are all one is the antidote. We all go through these things. I've noticed on LinkedIn lately, there have been an awful lot of people coming on and sharing about what they're experiencing. And they get hundreds of responses because people are so grateful that someone is actually opening up and then they can open up. Who's going to be the first person to open up? Who's going to be the first person? And how scary can that be? So I'm going to kind of start winding up. Let's just see if Michael's got another comment in there. Make sure I don't ignore it. Oh, that's his last one. So thank you so much, everybody who've been watching and listening today. And also thank you, everybody who watches and listens in the days and weeks to come. I really hope that this is actually food for thought, useful reflection for you, and that you get some value out of it. If you find it interesting, if you like my energy, although today I've been a bit nervous, so my energy is a little bit different from what it will be if you and I are actually chatting. If you feel like you'd like to talk to me about where you are and where you're going, just send me a message, or I will put a thing in the comments just saying how to book a clarity call and just a 15-minute chat if you'd like to do that. Come back to another live if you'd like to. They're every fortnight at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon in the UK, and that's 11 a.m. in Eastern Standard Time. And this is, you might enjoy my podcast, Truth and Transcendence. Go and check that out. Or my other podcast, Different Points, with the amazing Roy Colan. So thank you so much for watching and listening. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy your transitions, your turning points, your elevations, and enjoy resting as well. All the best. Bye for now.